3 million carry-on bags go through American airport scanners every single day. Thousands of them get pulled aside, not because anyone packed something dangerous, because an officer looked at the screen and could not tell what was inside. If you are flying anywhere in the next few months, this one is for you. TSA is opening bags over packing habits most travelers never think twice about, and the items causing it are completely legal to carry. I spent weeks going through TSA guidance, checkpoint procedures, and interviews with officers who have worked those screens for years. What came out of it was a list of 10 mistakes that turn an ordinary suitcase into an image nobody can read. Stay with me to the end, because number 2 is the one that gets your entire bag emptied onto a table. And number 5 matters especially if you are over 50, because it involves something almost every older traveler now carries. Let's start. These first few have something in common. Nobody packs them carelessly. People pack them thoughtfully, for good reasons, and get searched anyway. Number 10. Wrapped gifts. Get opened. You wrap the present at home so it is ready the moment you arrive. Ribbon, paper, tape, the whole thing. It is a kind gesture, and it makes complete sense, especially if you are flying to see family and you want to walk through the door with something in your hands. TSA officers have to be able to see what is inside a package. If the wrapping stops that from happening, they open it. Nobody at the checkpoint has the authority to bend that rule based on how carefully it was wrapped or who it is for. So the gift you spent 20 minutes on gets unwrapped in a metal tray in front of a line of strangers, and you carry the torn paper to your gate. Grandparents get caught by this constantly because the entire point of bringing the gift was arriving with it ready. Christmas travel makes it worse. December checkpoints see this happen dozens of times a day, and the officers doing it take no pleasure in it either. Customs officers apply the same requirement further down the line. A present that survived the checkpoint at one end can still be opened at the other, which is worth knowing if you are carrying something across a border. Something worth knowing about the wrapping itself. Foil paper and heavy metallic gift wrap are worse than ordinary paper because they interfere with the scanner in a way plain paper does not. The shinier the wrap, the more likely the bag gets stopped. The fix. Bring the gift unwrapped and wrap it once you arrive, or use a gift bag with tissue paper that lifts out easily so nothing has to be torn. Wrapping paper is one way to hide what is inside something. There is another material in almost every kitchen that does it far more effectively. Number 9. Aluminum foil sets off more searches than almost anything. Here is a rule that surprises people because the food itself is completely allowed. Foil is very difficult for a scanner to read through. It produces a solid, unreadable block on the screen, and anything unreadable means somebody has to open the bag. TSA does not prohibit foil at all. The equipment simply cannot see past it. Travelers who packed something homemade get caught most often. A sandwich for the flight, leftovers wrapped up from dinner the night before, a slice of cake for the grandchildren. Every one of those is usually wrapped in foil, because that is what people have always used, and it works perfectly well everywhere except an airport. What happens next is the frustrating part. The officer opens the bag, unwraps the foil, finds a sandwich, and hands it back to you. Nothing was wrong. Nothing gets taken. You simply lost several minutes and had your lunch handled in public. Baking trays make it worse. Anything baked and brought in a disposable aluminum tray creates a large flat block on the screen that officers cannot see through at all. A pie, a casserole, a tray of biscuits for the family you are visiting, all of them read the same way. Other metallic packaging causes the same problem. Foil-lined snack pouches, coffee bags with a metallic inner layer, and vacuum-sealed packets can all produce an unclear image if there is enough of them in one place. The fix. Move anything wrapped in foil into a clear plastic bag or a clear container before you leave home, and it usually goes straight through. Foil is thin and still causes problems. Something much thicker is sitting in a lot of carry-on bags right now. Number 8. Books and paper. Stop the X-ray completely. Books stacked together are dense enough that the machine struggles to see through it, and the same is true of thick documents, catalogs, and photo albums. Nothing about them is prohibited. They are simply solid enough that whatever sits underneath them becomes invisible. An officer who cannot see the bottom half of a bag has no way to clear it without opening it. Paperwork shows up more often than people expect because travelers frequently carry documents they do not want to check. Medical records, insurance papers, a folder of printed itineraries, legal documents for a family matter. Older travelers in particular tend to carry paper copies of things younger travelers keep on a phone, and that is a sensible habit that happens to slow down a checkpoint. Photo albums deserve a mention of their own. Thick, heavy, layered with plastic sleeves, and often carried by people visiting family precisely because they want to share them. On a screen, a photo album looks like a solid rectangular mass with something unidentifiable inside every page. Books cause a second problem people rarely think about. Several paperbacks stacked flat in the same part of the bag can hide anything sitting beneath them, which means the officer is not suspicious of the books at all. They just cannot see through to the rest of the bag. Newspapers and magazines behave the same way when they are folded into a thick bundle, and so do greeting cards packed together in an envelope. None of it is a problem on its own. It becomes a problem when it sits in one dense pile on top of everything else you packed. The fix: lay books and paper flat across the top layer of your bag rather than stacking them in one pile, so the scanner reads through fewer layers at once. Paper at least lets some light through. Metal does not, which brings us to the next one. Number 7. Canned food almost never clears. Short answer on this one, because the reasoning is simple. Cans are metal, and inside them is liquid, and neither can be read through. The screen shows a dense, opaque object, and nothing about the contents can be checked. If an officer cannot work out what it is, they are allowed to keep it. Technically, canned goods are permitted in a carry-on. Practically, they are one of the most reliable ways to get your bag searched and lose the item anyway. Cans cause trouble for a second reason, and it has nothing to do with the metal. Most canned food contains liquid, which puts it under the 3.4-ounce rule. A standard can hold far more than that, so even if the officer can identify it perfectly, it still exceeds the limit and still gets taken. This catches a specific kind of traveler over and over. Someone bringing a regional food home from a trip, someone taking a favorite tinned product to family abroad who cannot buy it locally, someone packing soup because airline food does not suit them. All of it makes sense, and none of it survives the checkpoint. Glass jars fall into a similar category, though for slightly different reasons. Jam, honey, sauces, and preserves are all liquids under the rule, and glass adds a breakage risk on top. Aerosol cans bring their own restrictions. Hairspray, shaving foam, and spray deodorant are permitted in limited sizes, but larger cans are not. And some aerosols are banned from aircraft entirely because of what is inside them. If you are not sure, the checked bag is the safer place for it. The fix: anything in a can or a jar travels in your checked bag, wrapped in clothing so it survives the journey. Metal and paper are at least familiar to the machine. Some objects confuse it for reasons nobody would guess. Number 6. Souvenirs can be the strangest problem in the bag. Some objects confuse the equipment not because of what they are, but because of what they are made of. Snow globes are the classic example. They contain liquid, they are sealed, and the amount inside is impossible to measure through the glass. Because the volume cannot be verified, most snow globes larger than a tennis ball do not make it through a carry-on checkpoint. Leaded crystal is another one. The lead content interferes with what the sensors can read, which is why a crystal vase or a set of crystal glasses often needs a separate look. Nothing about them is suspicious. The material simply blocks the machine. Musical instruments get inspected by hand regularly. Dense, oddly shaped, full of internal components and hollow spaces, they produce an image that officers cannot interpret at a glance. Microphones, camera equipment, and specialized tools land in the same category. Then there is the category that surprises people most: handmade or unusual items bought abroad. Carved wooden objects, stone ornaments, ceramic pieces packed in bubble wrap. None of it is banned. It is simply unfamiliar to a machine trained on ordinary luggage, and unfamiliar means someone has to look. Older travelers are often the ones carrying these because souvenirs for grandchildren and gifts from a long-planned trip tend to be exactly the sort of thing that confuses a scanner. Antiques and older objects add one more wrinkle. Metal figurines, brass ornaments, and vintage tools all read as dense, unfamiliar shapes, and a few of them look enough like something else to guarantee a closer inspection. If the item is valuable or fragile, that is another argument for handing it over yourself rather than letting it come out of a bag under pressure. The fix. Take unusual souvenirs out of your bag and send them through in their own bin, and tell the officer what it is before it goes on the belt. Those 5 are things people pack for good reasons. What comes next is different. These are the ones where the rule itself is the surprise. If this is useful so far, take 2 seconds and subscribe. Most travelers only find out about these at the belt, when it is already too late to do anything about it. Number 5. A tangle of charging cables looks alarming on a screen. Few searches happen more often at American airports, and it involves the most ordinary item imaginable. Loose cords produce an outline that is genuinely hard to interpret. Wires running in every direction, coiled around each other, layered on top of other objects. On screen, it reads as dense, chaotic, and impossible to break into separate items. One traveler described having her cable pouch flagged twice on the same trip, even though it held nothing but 4 charging cords in separate compartments. Nothing prohibited. Just an image the machine could not sort out. Devices have multiplied and the problem has grown with them. A phone charger, a tablet cable, a laptop cord, a hearing aid charger, a battery pack cable, all thrown loose into the same section of the same bag. 20 years ago, most travelers carried none of this. Now, the average carry-on holds 4 or 5 different cables. Medical device cords add another layer, and this is where it matters most for older travelers. A CPAP power cable, a mobility scooter charger, or a hearing aid charging case all look unfamiliar on a screen, and they usually sit right alongside the device itself. 2 unfamiliar shapes stacked together almost guarantee a closer look. That creates a problem beyond the delay. Medical equipment gets handled by someone else, in public, at a moment when you are already tired and rushed. Nobody enjoys having a CPAP machine lifted out and inspected while a queue builds behind them, and it is entirely avoidable with 2 minutes of packing at home. Cable searches are worth avoiding rather than accepting, and the reason is time. Each one is slow. The officer has to lift out each cord individually, separate it from the others, and confirm what it connects to. A tangle that took you 30 seconds to create takes several minutes to clear. Power banks make the situation more delicate still. They are allowed in a carry-on, but they are the one item officers look at closely, and a power bank buried under a knot of cables means the whole knot comes out before anyone can reach it. Keeping the battery separate from the cords saves that entire step. The fix. Keep all cords bundled in one pouch and pull that pouch out at the belt so it goes through where the officer can see it clearly. Cords confuse the picture. The next one is not about confusion at all. It is about a definition most travelers have never been told. Number 4. If you can spread it, TSA calls it a liquid. Most confiscations happen right here, and it comes down to a definition almost nobody has heard. Whether something feels solid is not the test. What matters is whether it holds its own shape. If it can be squeezed, poured, scooped, or spread, it counts as a liquid and falls under the 3.4-ounce limit. That definition swallows an enormous amount of food. Peanut butter, hummus, cream cheese, yogurt, soup, salsa, jam, honey, guacamole. All liquids as far as the checkpoint is concerned. Similar foods land on opposite sides of that line. A block of hard cheddar passes without a question, while soft brie does not, and a dry granola bar goes straight through while a small container of peanut butter gets taken. Toiletries fall under it as well. Toothpaste is a liquid. So is deodorant in stick form, sunscreen, hand cream, hair gel, and liquid foundation. Anyone who has ever lost a full-size tube of toothpaste at a checkpoint has met this rule without knowing its name. One part frustrates people more than any other. Container size is what gets measured, not how much is actually inside it. A large jar with 2 spoonfuls left is still a large jar, and it still gets confiscated. The officer cannot make an exception based on how empty it looks. Medication is the important exception. Liquid medicine, prescription creams, and medically necessary items are exempt from the limit entirely, but only if you tell the officer before screening begins. Say nothing, and the exemption does you no good at all. Baby food and formula carry the same exemption, which matters for anyone traveling with grandchildren. So does breast milk, and so do liquids needed for a medical device. In every case, the exemption depends on you mentioning it first, not on the officer working it out from the label. The fix. Before packing any food or toiletry, ask whether it holds its shape on its own. If it does not, it either goes in a small container or into your checked bag. Quick pause here, because the next 3 carry real consequences. Not a delay at the belt. Items thrown away, entire bags emptied, and the single biggest cause of searches in the country. Number 3. There is a powder rule and hardly anyone knows about it. Everybody knows the liquid rule. Almost nobody knows there is a second one that works the same way. Any powder in a container larger than 12 ounces has to come out of your bag and go through screening separately. It may need additional inspection, and the container may need to be opened. 12 ounces is roughly the size of a soda can, which is smaller than most people expect. That covers protein powder, ground coffee, spices, flour, powdered milk, baby powder, and loose cosmetics. On flights arriving into the United States from abroad, the rule has teeth. If a large powder container cannot be cleared at the checkpoint, it is not allowed into the cabin, and it gets thrown away on the spot. Baby formula, medically necessary powders, and human remains are exempt. Travelers bringing something back are the ones this catches. Coffee from a trip, spices from a market, loose tea from a shop you may never visit again, a tin of something you cannot buy at home, all perfectly legal, all sitting in a container well over 12 ounces. People get caught on the way out too. Powdered supplements, meal replacement powders, and large containers of protein are common in checked bags, but frequently end up in carry-ons by mistake. Powdered medications sit in a gray area worth understanding. They are exempt as medically necessary, but only if you declare them. An unlabeled container of white powder with no explanation is going to get attention no matter what is actually in it. Cremated remains are the most sensitive item in this category, and the rules around them are specific. They must travel in a container the scanner can see through, which usually means wood or plastic rather than metal or stone. An officer will never open the container, but if the material blocks the image completely, it cannot be cleared for the cabin. The fix. Large containers of powder belong in your checked bag. If you must carry one, take it out at the belt before anyone asks and say what it is. Losing a container of coffee is frustrating. The next mistake gets your entire bag emptied. Number 2. Batteries in a checked bag. Trigger a search of everything. Spare lithium batteries and power banks are not permitted in checked luggage at all. If screening finds one, it gets removed, and the discovery frequently leads to a search of the entire bag. Here is what separates this mistake from everything else on the list. Other items get pulled aside and cleared. A battery in the hold means the bag comes apart completely, every item lifted out and checked, because officers now have reason to look at everything else you packed alongside it. Fire risk is the reason. A lithium battery that overheats in the cabin can be reached by the crew within seconds. One that overheats in the cargo hold cannot be reached by anyone until the aircraft is on the ground. So the rule carries no flexibility at all. There is no size below which it stops applying, and no way to pack one safely enough to make it acceptable. Something changed for 2026 that is worth knowing. Cordless curling irons and flat irons that run on lithium batteries or gas cartridges are now banned from checked bags entirely. They have to travel in your carry-on with a cover over the heating element. Larger batteries carry one more restriction. Anything rated between 100 and 160 watt-hours needs your airline's permission in advance, and it is never allowed in a checked bag under any circumstances. Items that catch people are rarely the obvious ones. Electric toothbrushes. wireless earbuds in a charging case, a camera with the battery still inside, a tablet forgotten in a side pocket, a smart suitcase with a built-in charger. Every one of those contains a lithium battery, and several of them end up in checked bags without a second thought. Medical equipment deserves particular care here. CPAP machines with battery backups, portable oxygen concentrators, and mobility scooters all involve batteries with their own specific rules, and most airlines want advance notice before you travel with them. Worth knowing about gate checking too. If your carry-on is taken at the gate on a full flight, any battery inside it has to come out first and travel with you in the cabin. That is easy when the power bank is in an outside pocket, and difficult when it is buried at the bottom under everything else you packed. The fix. Anything that charges or holds a charge goes in your carry-on. No exceptions, no matter how convenient it would be to pack it below. Every mistake so far has been about one specific item. The last one is about all of them at once. Number 1. The mistake that causes more searches than the other 9 combined. Everything so far has been about individual items. Number 1 is about the bag itself, and it explains why most searched bags get searched. Overfilled bags cannot be read. When every space is filled and items are pressed against each other, the scanner stops producing separate objects and starts producing one solid mass. The officer watching cannot identify anything inside it, which means the only way to clear it is by hand. A former TSA officer put a number on this in an interview. An overfilled bag is roughly 10 times more likely to be pulled aside than a well-organized one. Not 10%, 10 times. Nothing in the bag has to be wrong for this to happen. The most common reason a bag gets opened at an American airport is not a prohibited item. It is a bag that was simply too full to see into. What makes it worse is the time it costs. An overpacked bag takes longer to search as well, because everything has to come out before anything can be checked, and then it all has to go back in. A bag with some room in it might take 4 minutes. A bag stuffed to capacity can take 15, and you are the one repacking it at the end while the line moves past you. For a senior traveler, this matters twice over. An overpacked carry-on is also the one most likely to be taken at the gate on a full flight, which means medication, documents, and glasses can end up in the hold when you needed them with you. One habit creates 2 separate problems on the same trip. Nobody looking at that screen is trying to catch you. They are trying to identify what they are seeing, and every mistake in this video makes that job harder. Foil blocks the view. Cans block the view, books block the view, tangled cords confuse the picture, and an overfull bag turns all of it into one shape nobody can read. Pack so that a stranger looking at a screen for 3 seconds can tell what is in your bag, and you will almost never be pulled aside. The fix. Leave some air in the bag, and if you use packing cubes, pull them out and send them through in their own separate bin so the contents never read as one solid block. Now I'm curious, which one of these surprised you the most? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to know. And if you want your next trip to feel smoother, calmer, and more in control, make sure you subscribe. Because stress at the airport doesn't come from travel. It comes from not knowing what's really happening.